The IQ number nobody wants to talk about for 80 years. Every generation got smarter than the last. Then it stopped. For nearly a century, IQ scores rose steadily, about 3 to 5 points per decade. Psychologists called it the Flynn Effect, and it seemed unstoppable. Then Northwestern University researchers analyzed intelligence test data from almost 400,000 people taken between 2006 and 2018. What they found: scores dropped in verbal reasoning, matrix reasoning, and basic math. The first sustained reversal ever recorded in the US. Researchers are calling it the reverse Flynn effect. Similar reversals have shown up in Norway, Denmark, Britain, and Australia. Here's the twist: one category actually went UP, spatial reasoning. The kind of thinking you use navigating a 3D video game or mentally rotating an object. The lead researchers take: this isn't proof humans got dumber. It's evidence that the kind of thinking our environment demands has changed, and IQ tests were built to measure a very specific, narrow slice of cognition. So is Gen Z less intelligent, or just intelligent in ways a 1930s test was never designed to catch? Your attention span is not a metaphor, it's a measured number. In 2004, the average person focused on one screen for 2.5 minutes. Today, 47 seconds. UC Irvine professor Gloria Mark has tracked human attention on screens for over 20 years using computer logging software. Not surveys, not guesses, actual second-by-second data. 2004, 150 seconds per screen. 2012, 75 seconds. 2016 onward, 47 seconds, replicated across multiple independent studies. And here's the part most people don't know. Once your attention is interrupted, it takes roughly 25 minutes to fully return to the original task. Mark's research also found something uncomfortable. We're just as likely to interrupt ourselves as we are to be interrupted by a notification. It's not only the algorithm's fault. It's a learned habit, reinforced tens of thousands of times a day. This isn't a generational personality trait. It's a documented shift in how brains raised on infinite scroll allocate focus. Attention span isn't declining because people got weaker-willed. It's declining because the environment got faster than the brain evolved to handle. The test scores are the lowest ever recorded. The class of 2024 posted the lowest reading and math scores in the history of a 50-year-old national test. The NAEP, known as the nation's report card, is the longest-running measure of U.S. student achievement. In 2024, 12th grade reading scores hit their lowest point ever recorded, 3 points below 2019. Only 35% of graduating seniors were considered ready for college-level reading. Math told the same story, the lowest scores since 2005. But here's the psychologically interesting part: the decline isn't evenly spread. It's overwhelmingly driven by the lowest-performing students falling further behind, while top performers actually held steady or improved. The achievement gap is what's exploding, not the average student's ability. Researchers are pointing to chronic school absenteeism, pandemic learning disruption, and reduced long-form writing practice. The percentage of students writing extended answers regularly has dropped too. The story isn't Gen Z can't read. It's that the students already struggling before COVID are now struggling more, while the gap between who gets left behind and who doesn't keeps widening. MIT put electrodes on people's heads while they used ChatGPT. MIT researchers hooked people up to EEG machines, had them write essays with AI, and found something they're calling cognitive debt. In 2025, MIT Media Lab researchers split 54 participants into 3 groups. One wrote essays using ChatGPT, one used a search engine, one used only their own brain. They measured brain activity with EEG throughout. The ChatGPT group showed the lowest brain connectivity of the 3. They struggled to quote their own essays back, meaning they hadn't actually encoded what they'd written. And when researchers then moved AI users into the brain-only condition, their neural engagement stayed suppressed compared to people who'd never used AI at all. This is a preliminary, non-peer-reviewed study with a small sample. Researchers themselves urge caution before drawing big conclusions. But it's the first neurological evidence that outsourcing thinking to AI might leave a measurable residue, even after you stop. This isn't about Gen Z being lazy. It's a live experiment in what happens to a brain that's handed a shortcut before it's finished building the long way. Why Oxford's Word of the Year was basically a diagnosis. Oxford's Word of the Year for 2024 wasn't a new slang term. It's from a book published in 1854. The word, brain rot. Oxford defines it as the supposed deterioration of a person's mental state from overconsuming trivial online content. Usage of the term spiked 230% in a single year, and the demographic driving that spike was Gen Z and Gen Alpha themselves. Henry David Thoreau coined it in Walden, worried that society was too distracted by trivial information even in 1854, over 100 years before smartphones existed. What's psychologically notable is who's using the term now. It's largely self-directed. Young people are naming and mocking their own relationship with short-form content, on the very platforms causing it. Oxford's language chief called it a cheeky self-awareness, the generation diagnosing itself in real time. A generation that can articulate exactly how its attention is being eroded isn't unaware. It might be the most self-aware generation about this problem we've ever had, even if awareness alone hasn't been enough to fix it. The case for Gen Z's intelligence. Every stat about declining test scores has a counterstat nobody puts in the headline. Psychologist and Flynn Effect researcher James Flynn himself warned decades ago against reading IQ shifts as simple smarter or dumber verdicts. Test scores are a proxy, not a direct read of the brain, and the content of intelligence tests has always been shaped by what a given era's environment demands and rewards. Case in point, the same Northwestern study showing declines in verbal and math reasoning found spatial reasoning, three-dimensional visual spatial processing, actually improved. Researchers explicitly link this to the visual, interactive digital environments people now grow up immersed in. Meanwhile, in the NAEP data, the drop is concentrated almost entirely in the lowest performing students. Top performers are stable or improving, meaning Gen Z isn't one falling monolith, it's a widening gap. The honest research conclusion isn't Gen Z is dumb. It's that we're measuring a generation with tools built for a different century, on a population that's splitting further apart by opportunity, and calling the whole mess one word. The dopamine mechanism behind all of this. None of this is a willpower problem. It's a reward prediction problem. Short-form content platforms are engineered around variable reward schedules, the same psychological principle behind slot machines. You don't know if the next video will be boring or hilarious, so your brain's dopamine system stays primed, checking again and again. Gloria Mark's research adds a second layer. Attention switching itself becomes a habit loop. Each successful switch, checking a phone, opening a new tab, gets reinforced, training the brain to prefer novelty-seeking over sustained focus, purely through repetition. This is why just focus harder doesn't work as advice. You're not fighting a character flaw. You're fighting a conditioned response built through thousands of daily repetitions, the same way any habit, good or bad, gets built. Gen Z didn't choose to have their attention systems trained this way. They're the first generation to have it happen before their prefrontal cortex even finished developing. So, is Gen Z actually dumb? Here's the real answer. I looked at every major study behind this debate. Here's the honest answer. Yes, some numbers are genuinely concerning. 12th grade reading and math scores at record lows. Attention spans measurably down from 150 seconds to 47. Early evidence that AI reliance may blunt certain kinds of cognitive engagement. But dumb is the wrong word for any of it, for three reasons psychology keeps surfacing. 1. The decline isn't uniform. It's concentrated in already struggling students, while high performers hold steady. That's inequality, not a generational intelligence collapse. 2. Some skills are rising, not falling. Spatial reasoning is up. Digital multitasking and information filtering are entirely new competencies older IQ tests never measured at all. 3. This generation is unusually aware of the problem, naming it, studying it, and building vocabulary like brain rot to describe it themselves. The research doesn't support Gen Z is dumb. It supports something more useful, a generation whose cognitive environment changed faster than our tests, our schools, and our own habits could keep up with.